In this episode, Golden and I discuss the 2019 Netflix original science fiction movie, I Am Mother. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 113. I'm your host, Oren Merton. So hey, not everything out there is a franchise. We just checked out the 2019 Netflix original sci-fi movie, I Am Mother, a standalone movie that has a 91% Rotten Tomatoes aggregate critics score, nominated for a bunch of its awards in its native Australia. Our friends loved it, and we thought, you know what? This is one we should check out. So we keep spoilers to not much more than you're going to find in the trailer. So if you're curious about the film but haven't seen it yet, don't worry, we've got you covered. And here we go. I am here with Golden to talk about the Netflix sci-fi movie, I Am Mother. This was one that was recommended to us by friends, and we were like, yeah, let's give it a shot. It looks kind of interesting. We watched the trailer, not knowing anything about it. We watched the trailer, thought, hey, sci-fi looks interesting. Looked like a very tight movie in the sense that it all more or less seemed to take place in one location, and it seemed like it was worth watching.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're saying, the Rotten Tomatoes with the critics is 91. Mm-hmm. The audience score is 75.
Really?
And yet on IMDb, it's 6.7 out of 10.
Huh.
So it's kind of all over the place. It's like some people really liked it, or some people were like, oh, yeah, it's okay.
Interesting. I wonder, I had read one critical report after I saw it, which said it was sort of like mashing up James Cameron and Ridley Scott. And I can kind of see that. It's not a very action-filled movie. It's about 2 hours. I don't want to call it hard sci-fi because it doesn't try and convince you of the science, but it is an attempt to be a sort of more plausible, say, than just a straight science fantasy. I mean, this is not Doctor Who, where someone shows up in a telephone box with a timey-wimey sonic screwdriver and saves the day. This is a darker story about a post-apocalyptic world where a robot is raising a young girl. She does not know any other beings, and then she finds one. So we're trying not to give too many spoilers, but that's in the trailer.
And it's got a little bit of a HAL 9000 of 2001 in terms of the robot look. And
right.
Apparently, it also, looking at some of the trivia on IMDb, has references to Portal and Portal 2, which I don't know that either one of us is really...
I played Portal 2 a little bit, so I'm sort of familiar with it.
So I thought, I haven't.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting story. It's a very slow burn, but it's incredibly well done. It's basically got just two human actors that you see in the entire thing. It's an Australian production. It's not an American production. And pretty much the two actors that you see are Clara Rugard, I'm going to pronounce her name as, forgive me if I got it wrong, who is daughter, and then Hilary Swank as woman. And those are basically the two humans that you see on screen. The other character, of course, being a robot, being Mother, and that is voiced by Rose Byrne. And those are pretty much the three characters, and it's a very, very tight story. And what makes it interesting is when you first are introduced to what's happened, and this is all in the trailer, there's been some kind of extinction event. This robot has a bunker full of human embryos to rebuild the human race, and it has basically hatched, if you will, one young girl, daughter. And we only know what she knows. That she's taught, she's the one left. It's radioactive outside and not safe for her. And Mother is being her caregiver, her teacher, giving her entertainment to watch to keep her interested. She's got activities. I mean, it's as fulfilling a life as you can have with no one else in your world but a robot. And then she eventually finds this other person who enters their bunker, and she begins to think that
She's caught in the middle.
yeah,
Because Mother is saying one thing, Woman is saying another thing, and she tests out those theories and still isn't sure who to believe.
right. And it's really interesting because Mother is not what you would expect from other sci-fi tropes. They really created a unique character in Mother. So you kind of come to this story with all the knowledge of whatever other sci-fi you've seen, and so you think, maybe she's lying, maybe she's a protector, maybe she's this, maybe she's that. And I thought the way that they that you reveal as the movie progresses,
As the layers are peeled away.
what the real story is. I thought that was really interesting, and it's held together by a good story, by really powerful acting. I thought on the case of the two principals. I think that a movie like this, it's strangely not effects heavy in the sense that there's CG in every single scene because the robot is obviously a robot. Yeah, clearly the robot that you're seeing is more than just a person in a suit. But for a movie that obviously is very effects heavy, it doesn't seem effects heavy. It's really seamless. They have a really good sci-fi set, and everything kind of takes place in this single environment. Not all of it. I mean, there are parts of it that are not. But the vast majority is in this one just bunker. And it looks really, really good. And the music is really good, too.
You're going to believe what someone tells you, the person that's growing up and taking care of you. You're going to continue to believe what that thing says, what Mother says, until something conflicts.
Right.
And there is something that early on is a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And Daughter's trying to figure out, well, how did this happen if nothing can live outside?
Yeah, it was...
Which just kind of starts the ball rolling down the hill.
Exactly. It's really put together well. It's really tight. It's a good story. It's well acted. And as we said, if you're looking for an action movie, this isn't it. There is very little action. It's much more of a psychological movie, which isn't to say that they just sit in a room and talk for 2 hours. I mean, of course not. This is not a adventure movie. This is not...
And Daughter is smart.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she has learned. She has observed. She isn't just buying everything at one point.
Right.
At one point, it's like, wait a minute. I'm going to start thinking for my own, and I'm not going to just believe everything that Mother says.
Well, and that's what's interesting, because what you learn early on, again, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers because I don't know how popular this is as far as a ton of people listening to this episode having seen it already. Mother is doing a good job of teaching her. You see her even in the trailer in classes. She's learning math. She's learning English. She's learning ethics. She's learning a lot of things that...
The arts.
Yes, the arts. She is learning things that will make her, that will teach her, that will inspire her to think for herself. And of course, one of the consequences of that is exactly what you said, that she starts thinking for herself. And that means she's not just going to buy everything Mother tells her.
I don't want to say too much because I think it's definitely worth watching.
Yes.
And I don't want to give too many details away. I don't want to give any spoilers away. I want someone to go in with their eyes open and just enjoy I Am Mother for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And reading a little on Wikipedia about it, I guess this was an Australian production that was originally released to film festivals, did very well, and was, I think, expected to have a theatrical release And I don't know if it's because they just didn't have enough money and theatrical releasing, especially globally, is incredibly expensive, or if it was because of the pandemic. But Netflix picked it up, and originally there was questions, was this going to be theatrically released at least somewhere or not? Instead, it was released, at least in the United States, only on Netflix. But this is not a cheap film. I mean, this film looks as good as any theatrical release you will
Someone's
see.
Review on IMDb says, "Do not watch the trailer. The trailer gives away the entire movie. Don't watch the trailer." I don't think it gives away the entire movie, but it does give enough away that I know at one point during the movie I turned to you and I said something, which ended up being true.
Yeah.
But, and I think part of that I probably gleaned from the trailer. But, no, it's if you're looking for a nice psychological, sociological...
It's a good word.
Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Yeah.
And here's a nice way to spend 2 hours.
It is. And it's the kind of movie that you will think about after you've seen it. I mean, that's one of the highest praises I can give it. I mean, there are a lot of movies I really liked that were really fun, but you more or less don't talk about them with your friends, your family, etc. after you've watched it, because it's like a roller coaster ride. You like the ride is over, and you move on. But this one sticks with you, I think.
And Mother is there to care for humanity.
Right.
She's got the 63,000 embryos that she's in charge of taking care of. And, you know, she is all for humanity.
Which, you know, this is not something that's brought up in the story. Just something I was thinking about as I watch it. And the whole thing about 60,000, that you get that in the credits. I mean, as it's openings. This is giving literally nothing away. But thinking about it, that's something you don't see in a lot of other sci-fi movies, that they actually thought about what size of population would be best to, like, repopulate. Like, I'm so used to seeing, like, in Star Trek, you know, the Space Seed episode that Khan was introduced. It's like they had 12 people. It's like, we're going to repopulate with 12 people. It's like, no, you're not. After a certain number of generations, everyone will be related to everyone, and now we're inbreeding. But I thought 63,000 was pretty damn clever. That's enough people that you can get some real variation, and people don't have to, you know, be related to each other, and that's a good number.
Well, it's 63,000 embryos, but you don't know if any of those are related.
Well, and obviously some may not survive and things like that. But it's enough to really get a good population going. I thought that was just, again, just another little example
Unlike,
of the writers.
Raised by Wolves, which starts with like 6 or 8.
6 or 8. Yeah. So I thought it was just another example of the writers, like, really just thinking about the story and trying to come up with things that would be plausible in this particular scenario. It just really helps just make the whole thing better, I think. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/113. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.